So she bursts in on Demeter, trying to make the baby immortal, burning away his mortal parts, and the baby dies because Demeter is, like, shook. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Leanna if you're new, and welcome to the very first episode of a new series I'm doing on my channel, Makeup and Mythology, where I do my makeup and also tell you an ancient myth. I really love watching these types of makeup and blank videos. My personal favorite person to watch is Sydney Black. She does makeup and mindset and also makeup and history, and I'm obsessed with both series, so I thought I would start my own series. I looked it up, and there are definitely other people who have done something similar to this, but nobody has taken the name Makeup and Mythology specifically, so I think we're good. All makeup that I use in this video will be linked in the description box as usual. Today I thought we would start out with a story that a lot of people are familiar with, the story of Hades, the god of the underworld, and Persephone, his queen. I do want to go beyond Greek myths eventually because I do feel a small sense of guilt for perpetuating Eurocentric standards of education, because I did make a big fuss about Asian representation, and a lot of you here are subscribed for that. And while I am still very, very passionate about that, I thought what better way to start out this series than with a story that a lot of us are already familiar with, and then go beyond that. I personally really love Greek mythology, and I have ever since I learned about it when I was 11, so I wanted to do this. So ever since I learned about Greek mythology, the story of Hades and Persephone has always been one of my favorites, and my zest for Greek mythology has kind of been reawakened ever since I started reading the Lore Olympus webtoon, of which the main characters are Hades and Persephone. That's the basis of my idea for this first episode. Unfortunately, the actual story between these two isn't as romantic or consensual as the webtoon makes out to be. If you're not familiar, this story is meant to explain the changing of the seasons. In ancient times, in various cultures, people would tell stories about the origins of the world and the universe with gods and goddesses in order to explain natural phenomena. Natural phenomena that otherwise could not be easily explained. So, to begin, Persephone was the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, Zeus being the god of the sky and Demeter being the goddess of harvest and fertility. They were siblings. Hades is Zeus's brother, which technically makes him Persephone's uncle. There's going to be a lot of incest. We're talking Greek mythology after all. Now, Persephone was hot, okay? She was hot. A lot of horny gods wanted her. She went by the name Kor, which meant maiden or daughter. She only really went by Persephone, which means bringer of destruction, later on, after certain events, but she is best known by the name Persephone. So Demeter was a bit of an overbearing mother, a bit of a helicopter mom, if you will, and she wanted to protect her daughter from all these horny men, and rightfully so. And honestly, that probably just made everybody want her even more, because they couldn't get her. One day, Persephone caught the attention of Hades, and he was like, wow, she is so hot, she is so pure, I want her for myself. And he's just like, well, I know I can't ask Demeter because she's gonna say no, and probably punch me in the face. So let's go to my brother Zeus, who can probably help me arrange this marriage. So Hades is like, hey broski, can I have Persephone? And Zeus, completely going over Demeter's head, is like, sure, you can have her. I got you, bro. Bros before hoes. Never mind that Persephone is Zeus's daughter, he just doesn't care. There are some different versions of this story. Some versions say that Hades actually asked Demeter first, to which she of course said, ew, no, get away from me, and then he went to Zeus. But in all the versions, as far as I know, he still goes to Zeus in the end, and concocts this plan to have Persephone for himself no matter what. Persephone doesn't even get a say in what she wants. So one day Persephone is playing in the fields, you know, as a goddess does. She's playing with, and I quote from the Homeric hymn, the deep-bosomed daughters of Okeanos. She was frolicking with some big-titty ladies, and Persephone spots this really gorgeous, really fragrant narcissus flower. Now, this flower was very deliberately placed. It turns out that Gaia, the Earth Mother, planted the flower there because Zeus told her to, and also she wanted to please Hades. Maybe she owed him one. So she sprouted this beautiful narcissus flower out of her own body, and Persephone reached out to grab it. And when she plucked it, the ground underneath split open, and out comes Hades, this motherfucker, in his fiery death chariot, and he grabs her. Now, in some versions, Persephone's friend Cyan, who was a naiad, was the only one who came to her aid upon seeing this scene, but of course she was no match for the god of the underworld, Hades. And after Hades took Persephone, Cyan melted in a pool of tears and became the river known as Cyan. Now, Cyan was a real one. We stan her. So, as Persephone was being dragged into the underworld, she shouted for Zeus, who ignored her because it was his damn plan in the first place, and also he was busy receiving sweet offerings from mortal men. And only Helios, the god of the sun, and Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft and magic, heard her cries. According to the Homeric hymn, Demeter also heard her, but when she came rushing for her daughter, she wasn't there. And some versions of this story cite that when the nymphs on site couldn't tell Demeter what happened to Persephone. In her rage, Demeter curses the nymphs to become heinous women with plumed bodies and scaly feet, thus creating the sirens. And it was only Cyan, the true MVP, that washed up Persephone's belt, signifying to Demeter that something was gravely wrong. So Demeter searches the earth for 9 days and 9 nights with flaming torches in her hands, but to no avail. But on the 10th day, she finally met with Hecate, who told her that she had heard her daughter's cries, but not who had taken her. And so Hecate is like, let's go to Helios, since he's in the sky all day long and he sees everything. So Demeter goes to Helios and begs him to tell her if he saw anything. And so he's like, alright Demeter, I respect you, and I also feel really bad, so I'll tell you who did it. It was Hades and Zeus. But it's okay, you know, Hades isn't that bad of a guy. He's your brother and also a king. And then he called his horses and rode off. And so Demeter was hella pissed, and she swore she would not step foot on Olympus until she saw her daughter again. And this time, she lived on Earth and disguised herself as a crone. She arrived at Eleusis and was taken into the home of Prince Celeus and his wife Metanera, where she was allowed to nurse their son, Demophoon, which is a funny name. And in return for their hospitality, Demeter decided to make the infant immortal. I mean, nobody asked her to. So Metanera was like, something is sus here. I'm gonna go check in on her. So she bursts in on Demeter, trying to make the baby immortal, burning away his mortal parts, and the baby dies because Demeter is like shook. Metanera screamed, and the baby died. And instead of being sorry, Demeter reveals herself as the goddess and scolds Metanera. Wow. And then demands that a temple be built in her honor. Demeter's kind of a bitch. And this temple became her place of dwelling. In the end, killing a baby and getting her own temple didn't really make her feel better about losing Persephone. So she decided to take it out on the earth and made sure that no crops grew, and the earth was barren and inhospitable. Now Zeus started to worry about this, because with no crops, there were no people, and with no people, he couldn't receive sweet offerings from mortal men, because he only gives a shit about himself. So he sends Hermes, the messenger god, to talk to Hades to see if he can give Persephone back to her mother. So he's like, okay, fine. And he goes tell Persephone, go back to your mom, but just know that I'm a pretty good option for you. You know, I'm your uncle, and I'm a king, and you can be a queen here, but I know you want to go back, so here, as a goodbye, eat this pomegranate. It was known that eating food from the underworld would bind you to the underworld forever. Persephone, feeling bad for the guy, is just like, okay, maybe I'll have a couple seeds, thinking that it would be fine. So she ate 4 seeds. Because she ate those seeds, she was doomed to stay in the underworld for 4 months a year. And thus, Persephone got to stay with her mother for 8 months of the year, and she would spend the other 4 in the underworld with Hades. And each year, during those 4 months that Persephone was in the underworld, Demeter would make the earth barren and cold and inhospitable, as she was sorrowing for her daughter. And that's why there's winter. In the underworld, Persephone actually grew to love her uncle, and she made a fine queen. And I guess they lived happily ever after, except at one point she did take a lover. But that's a story for next week. So that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!